Yeah, man. So that's the water chiller to keep our water out in our reservoir chilled at all to the ideal temperature. And it's kind of like the little details that matter when you're making hash. So, for example, the water chiller and reservoir are not in our room, which is the cooled, climate controlled lab, because this guy puts off a lot of heat. And it's those little things like ambient temperatures in your rooms that can make all the difference on preserving those terps and bringing the best oils.
Keeping those harder to capture strains, and grease up the bags and getting loss of yield or loss of quality.
And then when you do a multitude of those
That's
like
300
little,
gallons.
when you do a multitude of those little things like a water chiller in a room that's off gassing or exhausting in a different room than where you're actually doing production, on top of cryogenically freezing, on top of underlighting your canopies, it's all those little things that add up and make a difference on the end product. So
Making sure the product never thaws out until the resin's already been captured, so it stays cold the entire process, and there's no loss of yield or loss of quality. Just make sure that things stay in the prime. It's our Hoshizaki ice machine. Makes some really solid cubes, really clear, really clean. We run the clean cycle on this thing once a month so that it stays nice and premium and cold and clear and clean.
no fog in that ice at all. And that's mainly just because we're super on top of our filters. And speaking of, like right there is an
Reverse
RO,
osmosis.
yeah, reverse osmosis filter. So
We make sure there's no minerals in that water when we're washing. Sometimes if you are washing hash with non-RO water, it'll leave behind a mineral flavor and or a less clear final product. It's the Unit 1 lab. So we got big chest freezers here. We got our press here. Got the low temp mini Osprey that we run all of our product through. It's a perfect size. Do about 6,000 grams in a wash in here. Run it through the recirculating vessel. So we got the pump down there, runs through the collection vessel, and then we pump that water back through so it stays as cold as possible. Keep our water usage lower. It's all reverse osmosis water and ice as well, so that keeps it mineral free from any contaminants, or make sure it's the cleanest, crispest water possible. Keep this little computer safe with a little bag over. We got over here, we got the freeze dryers. So we got just finished the cycle on some Guzzleberry 10. Nice and dry. Yeah, I got the tier 2.
tier two, tier one. So we kind of separated by micron
Yep.
to go ahead and we
Make
have a
sure that,
mixed micron line, but mainly we're known for the obviously our 90U up. So that's kind of what that first tray you saw was. So
and then we use the tier 2 for things like edibles or infused products.
yep.
Or also mix it with our tier 1 for some freeze rolls.
Yeah, we'll
Got
do
the
more of a full spectrum variety for the freeze rolls, which are just live bubble hash infused joints. So
got our scientific oven where we do all our jamming, taking our card juice for the vapes. It's nice because it stays a really stable temperature, so we can ensure we're not having any heat spikes or anything like that that's gonna damage the product.
and that's kind of part of the secret sauce of the custard too, right? Like the custard is getting two different types of consistencies in there that are then blended, being like a cold cure and a jam, and then
One of our favorites, papaya. Yeah, 20-ish-year-old cut. We've had it for about 10 years. Not the highest yielder, but the terps are always on point. Beautiful color, beautiful consistency.
wish you could smell it through the camera.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorites. Extremely potent too for papaya. A lot of times people's complaints with the papaya-esque strains are that they're kind of lacking in the potency. That one's an absolute hammer.
And then, like, obviously, you've got your press with your controller. That puppy's getting up to temp for you, so we'll hammer out a press here in a little bit. Um, but big shout out to Low Temp, man. These guys are the best in the game. We've ran through multiple competitors' presses, and typically this is the most reliable, user friendly, and then their customer service. If anything's going wrong with your pump or your press, is A1, and that the same can be said about the Osprey as well.
Like our boy Jesse just took our pump all the way apart and did a full pump clean through and changing all the gaskets and everything to make sure it's staying absolute perfect shape, not leaking oil, keeping everything the way we want it. We also got our Tom Love here so we can take our fresh rosin or our resin or our product and make sure that it meets all the quality control standards, make sure that the spectrum is clean. We got all the stocks off that we wanted to, make sure that everything's looking good. kind of do some almost a melt test to see how clean the resin is. Just do a resin quality check before press, and also make sure you take a fresh rosin nug out of the mini Osprey. Make sure that you got all the heads off it. Kind of do a little check on the fresh rosin, see if it's worth taking for another spin.
And then that's the beauty of having somebody who's like detailed like Nick and then like Cam in the garden is that you got these, two guys who are pros in their respected fields. But when you're giving that science and that data back to each other, it again comes back to the little details. Nick can go ahead and let Cam know how some of the glands, how the trikes are looking, how a strain's going, and then that ultimately helps us decide on what to do with that strain and what the best route to do with that strain is.
If it
Whether it's
meets the
yeah,
quality for a tier one product that we're going to sell as tier one cold cure or custard, or if it's better off getting put with mixed micron, just a more value product, but still an excellent smoke.
yep.
But make sure we're keeping our tier one quality control where we want it, so that we're not letting anything out to the public that we wouldn't stand behind.
And that's why our pheno hunts are so extensive. It's like it starts in the garden, right? But you got to see it all the way through into the lab, and all these little data points on how trichomes are developing, the measurements from the heads to the necks. Are they going to snap and break the way we need them to? All the way to what microns are. Like somebody could say, "Oh, this strain gave me 5% bubble back," but it's like what percentage of that bubble is going to be actually in that money bag micron we're looking for, like that 90U, or is it just a lot of lower micron stuff, which has more particulates and other things in there that aren't as
Higher level of contaminant. See, a lot of stock stuff will fall in the lower bag as it breaks off from the glandular heads. Or if it's not a strain that has the weak neck trait, a lot of times it'll break off lower on the stock, and so that'll might get caught in a higher bag, but it's not as clean of a product. It's going to have a higher lipid and fat content once it does get pressed. So then it's not as smooth, not as terpy. So overall, not as quality of the smoke is something that has that weak neck trait that really breaks off in that 90 bag. There's a clean separation, a thinner glandular head that's still thick enough to make it through the wash, not hydrophilic. Uh,
yeah, and a lot of that plays part too on once it's all dried and it's all good, it plays part on how it's going to press as well. You can have a
absolutely.
strain that gets you a ton of bubble, has the terps and meets the thing, and then it presses at 60%. And you're like, okay, I have to take into account, especially since we're a commercial business paying taxes and trying, you have to have that balance of business professionalism per se, and then also being quality driven as well. And I think that's what we're finally getting to a good point with the communication in the team is this is what we need to do to stay in business, but how can we do that at the highest quality possible? And ultimately to bring the best rosin, you have to be, it starts in the garden. And so big shout out to the whole grow team here at Meraki Brands and Mighty Melts. Like they're doing a good job to really keep our passion and our dream alive to bring high quality terps to the Colorado market.
Yeah, an arrangement that makes sense for everybody. And there's certain strains like the pineapple meatball that are going to press not as well as others. They just have a little less resin in those glands, a little stiffer glandular heads, a little thicker cuticle. But something like the pineapple meatball has the terps that really make sense, even if it's not the highest yielding. It's such insane terps that it's worth running small head stash batches more, a little broken up, but still worth having in the library. Things like Crash Glow with a little thicker head, but they dump in the wash. They make a lot of sense. They're not going to do something that's not going to cure quite as wet as something like, per se, our Pheno Hunted cut of black maple that has super thin heads, cures insanely wet, still dumps about like almost 7% full spec. So like 5.5 in that tier 190U bag. So it's a really, really nice cut that we're really proud of hunting. We hunted that one about 3 years ago, and it's been a staple in our library since.
Yeah, and
So
I wish I could say that. Oh, doorbell's going off. Wish I could say that. So that's a long one. Wish I could say that every strain, like I'd be lying if I said that every single strain is profitable. Since we're all such terp heads here, and ultimately it's like terps over everything. So why we're with the terp god. But like it's we have strains that are not economic. Like you're
pineapple
not you're
meatball.
yeah, pineapple meatball. It's
Yeah.
doing well under 3% rosin back, but
Yep.
it's just an insane true pineapple terp that we love. But to Nick's point, we make up with that with something like Crash Glow, which is still fire,
Yeah, super
but it
fire.
just happens to be it rewards you with
Yep.
like really good
Yeah.
returns.
And a big shout out to Three's Genetic Reserve on that Crash Flow cut. They've got some really nice cuts that we've been running. The McLaren as well. The Fatso Biscotti Sundae, also known as Biscotti Chunks. The Butte. We got all of our bubble in this freezer.
Yeah. What did you want to? Which jar do you want to sift into?
Probably this one.
Okay.
The same strain. I already pressed some of.
So again, man,
come to temp so no condensation gets on the hash itself. That'll lower the quality. You don't want water getting back into the resin you already freeze dried and pulled all that moisture out of. So it's better to let the jar come to temp so no condensation forms on the inside and forms on that bubble hash. Because otherwise, when you press it, there's going to be not a ton, but any sort of humidity and condensation is just really can damage the product. So that's a empty jar of some guzzleberry that we already pressed and got more guzzleberry in the freeze dryer about ready to come out.
We're gonna sip that puppy up for you and get that going here.
We try to run that freeze dryer as absolutely low and slow as possible, so that we're making sure we're not volatilizing a lot of those more water soluble terpenes or heating them up and getting them gone. So there's gonna be a little ice chips left, but it's better to under it than over it. Same strain going into this jar that was just in it. I'm gonna make sure we keep all our resins separate and clean.